Hello, my name is Parker, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, if you haven't gotten the chance to check out any of the previous episodes of this series, I do suggest you go do so now, as we are on day 23 of Echoes of the Past October, a month-long prompt event being run by none other than Typically Untypical. If you haven't gotten the chance to check them out, please go do so now. Today's prompt is: there are some temptations that cannot be resisted, some lessons we never learned. Suzanne Hill, Mrs. De Winter. As always, there are some trigger warnings for this episode, although I think this one is kind of a sweet one. I'm so sorry if my voice sounds sort of somber today. I went through some really bad stuff for the day, so. Without any further ado, this is Temptations by me. Emile was picture perfect. No one could say anything otherwise. He had been perfect for as long as he could remember. He was in college for a major in psychology and worked at a small coffee shop owned by his older brother Patton. Of course, though, to be perfect, one has to have rules. So, Emile had rules. He was headstrong and stuck to his rules like a lifeline. Rule number 1 was to study at least 1 hour a day. The second rule was to not let studies get in the way of friends and family. The last rule was not to date until he was out of college. He was strong-willed, and in all the years he had put into school, he never once was in a relationship. He had been asked out plenty of times by people of all genders, but he kept to his studies. Yet, on one of his days off, he sat in the coffee shop, sipping lightly at his brother's favorite coffee, and working on some homework about the functions of a child's brain. He saw a tall boy with purple-dyed hair and a dark aesthetic to him. Emile was always very aware of the fact that he liked men with emo looks, but he found it impossible to look back at his work in there, as though his eyes were instantly drawn to him. Patton, who was on shift, smiled and pointed the man in his direction. He knew Emile wasn't looking today until he finished college, but there was also no way that he hadn't seen Emile struggle to focus on his assignment. The man's eyes traveled over to where Emile was sitting, and it was all Emile could do to look like he was writing notes down. The taller man started his way as he read the next few sentences of the slideshow he was looking at. Although it didn't do much in terms of memorizing, as a matter of fact, he had probably read it 17 times and had no idea what it said. The man stopped by the table, looking a little more than nervous. "Hi, is this seat taken?" he mumbled, looking almost hopeful. Slowly, Emile looked up and shook his head. The man slightly smiled and took a seat opposite of him, silently sipping his tea. Emile basked in the comfortable silence for a few seconds before leaning back over his notebook to read his notes. "What are you studying?" the man asked, and Emile looked up slowly, smiling. "I'm in college for psychology," he answered brightly. He gave a stunned look before Emile seemed to process something. "Oh, where are my manners? My name is Emile Hart," he explained. The man seemed to snap out of his trance after a second or so. "I'm Virgil Storm. Nice to meet you, Emile," he gave. So, Virgil and Emile chatted. They chatted until Patton had to kick them out because they were closing. Over time, Emile spent so much time there when he wasn't working, studying, and talking to Virgil that it became obvious to all the staff that he had a major crush on the taller emo boy. "Hey kiddos, what can I get for you?" Patton murmured as he came up to the pair. Virgil smiled, giving Patton their usual order, and continued talking about his older brother, Logan, and the business that he ran. Emile fondly watched before catching a hitching in his breath. "What's wrong?" Emile thought aloud. Virgil vaguely blushed, looking away from Emile before bravely looking back. "Well, I know you have rules about dating whatever, but I was wondering if you'd maybe like to give us a chance, he asked, closing his eyes as though he couldn't look at Emile for fear of him rejecting him. What he didn't expect was Emile to lunge at him and embrace him with literally no warning. So, thus was the start of a less than perfect version of Emile. Although, if you were to ask him, he would argue it was more perfect after Virgil came into it than it was before. I do hope you guys have enjoyed today's video, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day and be safe.